What do you want out of me? What this is? Oh boy. I'm Mike Luciano of the Jet Press. Justin Fried will be joining us in just a few minutes. We wanted to get on as early as possible because this needs to be discussed. Wow. Jets are 2-4. A season that began with Super Bowl aspirations is now pretty much over. For all intents and purposes, the season is over. They are 2-4. They have Pittsburgh coming up next week. I don't think they win that. Primetime again. They have Houston 2 games after that. Now there's a New England mixed in there, but then they have Houston after that. New England looks better with May. There's a non-zero chance this team's like 2-7, 3-6 with Aaron Rodgers. Where to begin? First, I know where to begin. It's support the Showtime. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Download us there. And big help if you subscribe on the Jet Press YouTube channel. You can like the stream there. You could subscribe there. Those really help push us up the ranks in the chat, because where do we even start with this one, man? This is beyond the pale. We've done same old Jets 1,000 times over till we're blue in the face. This is same old Jets of a level that we very rarely see. They hung with it against a very good Bills team, against Josh Allen playing like a guy who doesn't normally play like this against the Jets. Looked great. This defense was terrible early on. I'm like, okay, this is going to be another romp, and then we could just mourn the play of the Jets. But then Aaron Rodgers came alive, and Aaron Rodgers had, for the first 35 minutes, his best game in years. That Hail Mary to Lazard, it was textbook as we welcome him, Justin Fried. So I'm feeling all good about that. And then talk about just being kicked right in the nards. You could not get a more aggressive gut punch for a fan base. That was almost unspeakable in terms of just the emotional damage it did. And the season's probably over, because I don't think the wild card's coming out of the AFC, and I don't think the Jets are going to beat Buffalo record-wise and go, 10-2 the rest of the way they probably have to be. So 6 games into the Aaron Rodgers experience, I'm calling it over. I'm calling it dead and buried.
The Jets are a bad football team, Mike. They're not good. They're not the worst. There's worse teams out there, but they're not going to be good. And I don't think they're going to be good with this current iteration that they have, the coaching staff, the roster, the regime, whatever you want to call it. They're a bad football team. This was a really good game. That was unfortunately ruined by an absolute shit show of a refereeing performance. But overall, this was a really good game between 2 division rivals. Both teams made their share of mistakes. Both offenses were honestly kind of cooking. The defenses struggled at times. Honestly, a very good game. The Jets have a knack for losing games like this. And this was one of those games that they just could not lose. They had an opportunity here to rewrite the narrative, to flip the script on their season. And they were in disarray. It was chaos. They fired their head coach. But if you win this game, you are in first place in the division past the month of September for the first time since week 12 of 2010. Braylon Allen was 6 years old the last time that happened. Tyron Smith, who's now washed apparently, was still in college the last time the Jets were in first place in the AFC East beyond the month of September. And the Jets had an opportunity to take that right now, in this game. They could have been in first place. Instead, they're not. Instead, they're 2-4. Instead, they lost another game. The more things change, the more they stay the same. They fired
the 7th pick in the draft, by the way, now. So
the 7th pick in the draft. They fired Robert Saleh, and they lost in pretty much the exact same way that they lost to the Vikings.
I would argue even more exaggerated ways, because the things that you didn't like about Saleh, I would argue, were worse in this game. There aren't a lot of positives, so let's get them out of the way first. I feel like that's fair.
Sure.
Aaron Rodgers for 35 minutes was spectacular.
I thought he was great for pretty much the entire game. I honestly thought he had a great game.
Allen Lazard, what a fantastic game he had with Wilson going down, the Hail Mary. Big ups to Allen Lazard. Breece Hall woke up.
He did.
Todd Downing I know guys are going crazy about Todd Downing early on. I was not too high on Downing calling a game. It's better, certainly, than Hackett, but I think it's just, I don't think there was anything special about it. I just think Hackett is such a, not only is he the bottom rung of coordinators, but he's so far even below the bottom rung that just having like regular 18th, 19th in the league level scheme and play calling just looked like a miracle, looked like Bill Walsh here. So there's like, here's a normal offense. We're all going, whoa, oh my God. So I mean, I guess that's an upgrade.
Realistically, by the way, Mike Williams apparently got concussed on the play that he fell down. So that's,
of course he did. Why wouldn't he? I think he's faking.
He's being evaluated for head injuries. I don't know if he actually is concussed. I see that.
I don't think he had a concussion. Guy hasn't done anything.
Well, I think that Downing, sure. Like, I think the offense looked different this week. I'm not sure how much of that credit should go to Todd Downing and how much of it should just go to Aaron Rodgers putting his ego aside, because a lot of the things that they did are things that I imagine that they probably wanted to do before this week. They did a lot more pre-snap motion. They ran a lot more out of the pistol. Todd Downing, or whoever is running the show now, seems to love those little pitches out to Breece Hall, and it was working to some degree. I think that the running game, and specifically Breece Hall, finally got involved, and it's not a shock that Breece Hall got involved and finally had his best game of the season, his breakout, his sort of vintage Breece Hall performance. It's not a shock that happened when the offense's identity changed and it was a little less predictable when they were going to run the ball and how they're going to run the ball. I think that was very much not a coincidence. But again, I don't know how much of that credit goes to Todd Downing and how much of it is Aaron Rodgers just kind of relenting a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the positives are there. I think the Jets played a good football game. They played well. This was a good game. The Jets played well. They just left 13 points on the board. And sure, the Bills left some points on the board as well. The Jets missed 2 field goals. Greg Zuerlein is washed. He's completely washed. Jeff Ulbrich just commented on Greg Zuerlein, said he's not concerned. And then he knows
should be concerned.
I'm
concerned.
And that he knows he's going to make.
That wasn't concerning. 2 missed field goals and a 3-point. If that's not concerning, they're never going to cut him. What is concerning as a kicker?
It gets better, because Ulbrich also said that he knows that that Zuerlein will make some winning kicks this season.
Oh, really? He had 2 chances. He missed them.
Yeah, I would challenge that notion and just
Jesus
say that.
Christ, Ulbrich. If people rip Saleh for being bad at the podium, that's how you start?
Nothing was going to change, man, when they fired Saleh. Like, people were like, the attitude's going to be different. No, the issues are still there. The Jets are still a bad football team.
I don't think this scoreline's any different with Saleh. In fact, honestly, maybe it's better.
What
Ulbrich, the defense looked worse without. I know Ulbrich's calling plays still.
Yeah.
But it looked worse. It looked more disorganized. Look, we'll get into the refs and those ticky-tack penalties, but
it was awful.
A lot of them are. If this was Saleh and they were having them, this is not like a ref show thing. They would be people be ripping their hair out of their heads, saying Saleh's undisciplined. Keep it with Ulbrich. Keep it up.
What sucks is, again, I think the Jets played a good football game. I think that they played well. You just, unfortunately, you can't leave as many points on the board as they did. You can't make all the mistakes that they did against a good team like the Bills and expect to win. I mean, yeah, the Braylon Allen rushing touchdown in the third quarter. He gets in. Tyron Smith, who's had a terrible game, and is
what a waste he's been.
He's been a major disappointment this season. Tyron Smith gets called for a hold.
Everybody's been a major disappointment.
Smith gets called for a hold that had no impact on the play. 2 plays later, Greg Zuerlein misses a 32, 34-yard field goal, shanks it off the left upright. It was one of his 2 misses in the second half, both of which were within 45 yards. You're not going to win games like that. And that's what I mean when I say the Jets are a bad football team, because they played a good game today. I think they're better than a 2-4 team. This Jets team, probably around an 8-win team, 9-win team at best, in my opinion. But they find ways to lose these games consistently. And it's in similar fashion. Again, they fired Robert Saleh, and the same exact thing happened this week. They lost in the same way. Mike Williams falls down on an interception, that an Aaron Rodgers interception on the final drive of the game to end the game. Like, it's the same way. It's the same thing. I feel like we're living in the fucking Twilight Zone. Like, nothing matters when you do that. Like, it pisses me off, because they played well. And there were mistakes here and there. And I said this right before that final drive. It's like, no one's going to remember those mistakes. No one's going to point to the 13 points you left on the board. No one's going to care about the refs. No one's going to give a shit about any of that. If you score right now and you win this game, and they still couldn't do it, because the Jets cannot win games like this. They just can't. They are a bad football team that loses good games. That's the story.
I have 3 main takeaways from this game. We've kind of gone into 2 of them a little bit. Number 1, Greg Zuerlein, like, you please get off the like. I can't do this. I
What's
can't.
they
It's two
just
games now. I can't do this.
they just what's his contract though? Because they just gave him a 3-year.
Who gives a rat's
He's giving two.
ass
No,
what his contract is?
Cutting him right now, I don't know, man. I mean, they could. They would also be taking on some dead cap, but they definitely could do it. I don't think they're going to.
They're
not going to.
I'm struggling to think of things I care less about than a Greg Zuerlein dead cap hit.
Well, what's really unfortunate is that Greg Zuerlein literally had the best season of any Jets kicker ever last year, and now completely fell off a cliff because kickers just don't make any sense.
Probably because he sucks now. Oh well, get rid of him.
Yeah,
Don't say he's gonna make more. That's what you do with kickers who suck.
I've seen some people throwing around the wind excuse. Yeah, sure.
Again with the wind.
Hold on, listen to me. Hold on. Yeah, I'm sure that didn't help matters, but this was a story of the wind not helping two bad kickers because Tyler Bass is also not very good. You want to get Bills fans pissed off? Bring up Tyler Bass's name. He is not well liked around those parts. This was a case of two bad kickers who, yeah, maybe the wind conditions didn't help, but Greg Zuerlein's been doing this shit since the summer. So
I got to hear about Mother Nature and the Jets again. That's twice now I'm hearing. Not from you, but from either fans or Jets coaches. The wind and the weather. Okay, so Mother Nature, that's why we're losing that. Give me a break. So that's number one. Number two, as much as the Downing improvement over Hackett was nice, Robert Saleh was going to do that anyway.
Yep.
So I don't really credit that to Ulbrich. I think the defense looked worse. Now, granted, injuries, we've talked about the personnel issues quite literally for months.
Yeah.
Other defensive line personnel issues. Obviously, no Reddick still. I get all that, and I get that they played actually really well in the second half. 3 points allowed. You got to give them credit for that. But
they did.
They dug themselves a pretty big hole with those 20 points where I don't even think the Bills were really even trying offensively. It was just, boop, here we go. Boop, 8-yard run. Boop, 7-yard run. 10-yard guy open. Yeah. Penalty on the Jets, extending drive. It was maddening to watch. That's number two.
Well, I think on that note, I think, it comes down to a few things, those defensive struggles. And I do want to give them credit for tightening up in the second half. Some of it was, again, there was a Tyler Bass missed field goal in there. It wasn't all perfect, but they tightened up a lot. A lot of those issues, I think the linebackers played very poorly. I think it was the worst game that the Jets linebackers, who have been fantastic this season, played. The defensive line is bad. We know that. They have zero pass rush. I don't care how many sacks or whatever you want to throw out Will McDonald's pressure rate. He can't be your best pass rusher. He just can't be. He's fine. He got stonewalled all game today. He's fine.
That's not that one sack he got. So
and they have absolutely no juice elsewhere. Quinnen Williams, massive disappointment. I don't want to hear the double team shit. I don't want to hear that. This man is supposed to be in Dexter Lawrence conversations. Not even in the same tier as Dexter Lawrence right now. Quinnen Williams has been a major disappointment. And I'm not going to say that it's all on him because the personnel around him sucks too, but he's been a major disappointment. You're supposed to have a superstar player there. He's supposed to make superstar plays. The defensive line stinks. And then the other two parts of it, your secondary was majorly depleted. I mean, you lost 3 of your 5 defensive starters at a point. Ashton Davis was getting cooked. One of those touchdowns was entirely on Ashton Davis. They really missed Chuck Clark. You had Isaiah Oliver playing nickel. I mean, I think if Michael Carter's healthy, Isaiah Oliver is probably in there at safety instead of Ashton Davis. Instead, you have to have him in the nickel. And then Brandon Echols had to come in for DJ Reed, who has a groin injury, and he might miss time. Echols was getting picked on late in the game. Those definitely didn't help. And then I think part of it is also Jeff Ulbrich is now both calling defensive plays and handling head coaching duties.
Saleh didn't even – I think early on Saleh did, and then he gave it up, and it got better.
Yeah, Saleh was not calling defensive plays for most of his Jets tenure. And I think that could absolutely be partially why the Jets defense was worse, especially in that first half. It was the first time that Jeff Ulbrich had done it. Now, maybe that's something that gets better. Maybe it's something that they revisit, and maybe Ulbrich isn't calling plays in the future. I don't know. But I think all of that combined is why the defense had a letdown, especially in that first half.
By the way, keep chatting away. We'll get to most of your comments in chat.
We will get to
backlog. We'll get to those. Number 3, like Rodgers for most of the game, I'm like, wow, he's just doing it all himself. But like also, but the thing with Rodgers, like, here's my thing on Rodgers.
Sure.
Like, no one can argue. Like, overall, he played a great game if you just look at A, the numbers, and B, just watched it. Hail Mary aside, that's like half luck. Even outside of that, I thought he was tremendous today for most of it. They got him to win games that Zach Wilson can't win. Driving late. They've now had 3 opportunities in 3 straight weeks where they've had a chance to take the lead and they get the ball, and it's been missed field goal, interception.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you get Aaron Rodgers. Like, we're doing the whole, this and this happened. They could be 4-2, 5-1. Well, shit happens. Like, Aaron Rodgers I hate being like, the quarterback's got to step up and stuff like that, but it is disappointing when the sole reason you acquire Aaron Rodgers is to win you games late that Zach Wilson could not win by himself, and he's been given 3 opportunities in a row, and while not all his fault, he's, I think, principally at fault because he is the quarterback for now 3 drives in a row at the end of losses.
Sure.
Where the Jets have now failed to come back, and now they're 2-4, and for all intents and purposes, the season's pretty much over.
The quarterback will always shoulder a lot of the blame because the quarterback is the leader of the team, the leader of the offense, and I understand that take. I will say that the narrative is completely different if 3 things that are completely out of his control don't happen, and because of that, it's hard for me to really even say that as a valid criticism of him. If Greg Zuerlein makes that field goal, the Jets are 3-3, and they're not 2-4. If Mike Williams doesn't fall down on 2 different plays, the Jets are potentially they win 2 more games. Who knows? Maybe they at least win one of those games. And the narrative is completely different. And the narrative isn't that, Aaron Rodgers didn't win them games. And so that's why it's hard for me to kind of put that blame on him. I thought
What's the narrative now? Just oops.
The narrative now is the Jets are a bad football team that finds ways to lose every single week. It's different each week what happens, but they find ways to lose.
And I think why I got a little more piss and vinegar than you do about this whole thing is, like, these issues, I guess, could be correctable with time, but by the time they correct it, they're going to be probably 3-6, and the season's for sure over.
The issues with the Jets, I don't think are correctable with this current regime, and I've said that before. I mean, and it's not even schematic shit. Like,
that's the end of Rodgers too, right?
Yeah,
the whole thing failed.
In theory, yes. The entire.
Oh boy, we got more connection issues.
Fucking, I hate my Wi-Fi. The entire Rodgers experiment.
It happened to me before he got on too, so.
Wonderful. The entire Rodgers experiment is trending towards failure, yes. And that's not necessarily the faults of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's so dumb to just point blame fingers at one person. It's the fault of a lot of people. Rodgers is at fault for certain aspects of it. But yeah, the entire Rodgers experiment, you're 2-4 right now through 6 weeks in your first full season with Aaron Rodgers. That's trending towards a failure. It doesn't mean it's going to be, but you're absolutely trending in that direction.
Well, if they miss the playoffs, it's a failure, right?
Absolutely, of course.
So they got to go 10-2, 9-3 for it to not be a failure.
I think they can make the playoffs with 9 wins.
I don't see them as a wild card.
The Jets, the wild card's really thin right now.
I think one of the AFC North's getting in.
Sure, Pittsburgh, whoever, whatever.
Yeah, I think the Chargers are getting in.
That's a maybe. That's
2 of them.
That's a maybe. I would not put the Chargers like a definite again.
So I guess there's one other spot, but even then, they've dug such a hole for themselves.
It's early in the season, and I'd say there's only a few AFC teams that have really separated from the pack. I don't think the wild card by any means is out of the equation. Obviously, I don't think the Jets right now are a playoff team. I don't think the way that they are playing is, or at least I don't think the way they're finishing these games is a playoff team. Because
they trade for Devontae, I'm going to be mad. That does not fix any of this.
They might. I don't think it fixes, but it helps it. I think they're going to be less aggressive now to trade for Davante Adams, but I still think there's a very real chance that they do trade for Davante Adams in a day or two. Like, if it happens, it's probably going to happen in the next couple of days. The question is obviously how motivated are they going to be to move him now? Make a move for him? How motivated is Davante Adams to try and push for a move here? Is he still looking at this team and saying, all right, look, I can come in and fix things? I don't know. I don't know where he's at with that. I mean, it's not like New Orleans is in a significantly better situation. Derek Carr's out for a few weeks. So I don't know where his head's at, but I think it would definitely help. It would make the Jets a better football team. It'd make them more likely to make the playoffs. But do I think they're winning the Super Bowl if they trade for Davante Adams? No, I don't. There's still a lot of flaws.
Will they win a playoff game with Davante Adams? That's my measure for success. Win a playoff game.
I think they'll have the talent to do it. I don't know if they will. I think the Jets right now. I think the Jets.
I don't even think they have the talent to do it. We thought they had because they had guys like Tyron Smith and Mike Williams. Like, what's happened to them?
If you were to say
they put that green logo on their helmet. Now they got stupid.
If we were to say based on merit alone, based on talent, based on how the Jets have played, I think they've played to be a 3-3 team, possibly 4-2. Unfortunately, they're 2-4 because they're a bad football team that can't win these games. So can they win a playoff game if they trade for Davante Adams? Yeah, absolutely. I think they'd be good enough to do it, but I have zero confidence that this current regime, this current coaching staff, everything with the current organization, I have zero confidence that they'd actually be able to do it.
All right, chat time. Let's get to chat. We got a real doozy of a chat today. So
We
thank you
appreciate
for
everybody tuning in.
feel free to keep adding your comments. We'll get to as many as we
There
can.
are, I know there are better ways to spend your Monday nights necessarily than venting about the Jets, but we appreciate everybody tuning in and commenting and just chatting about the Jets with us because it's
welcome to hell with us.
Yeah.
Our first guide on the journey through Hades here is Alex Lortordo. I don't know if I could be a fan anymore. Lifelong. My neighbor offered me decent tickets to see them in Pittsburgh, and I told him I just need to watch in the privacy of my house. It's getting to that. Like these are the games I always hate. I don't hate same old Jets as a concept because, there's same old Browns. For a while, there were same old Lions. Like, it happens a lot. But these are the games where you start getting existential, and you're like, there has to be something else at work here.
Yes.
Greg Zuerlein just misses a 32-yard kick, and there's 11 penalties. You're like, there has to be something because nobody from the other bad teams is here. It's entirely new people, except one guy who's an 80-year-old pharmaceutical magnate who's not taking any snaps. And it's still, here we are.
The unfortunate truth and the unfortunate reality is that sometimes there's no one person to blame. And I think with this situation, there's no one person to blame. There's no fix. We could sit here and say the little things. Like I could say, yeah, the Jets could probably use another run stuffer. Maybe, Devontae Adams definitely helps. He improves their situation. But the Jets are losing because they're just bad and they find ways to lose. And I don't know whose fault that is, Mike. It's because you can't blame Robert.
It's not Saleh, as we found out today.
You can't blame Robert Saleh because they fired him. I don't know specifically what Jeff Ulbrich is
not
doing.
Hackett either.
Right. I don't know what specific Jeff Ulbrich is doing that would make him at fault. Aaron Rodgers didn't play poorly. Yeah, you could point to specific guys like Tyron Smith played poorly. Greg Zuerlein missed a couple of kicks. You can point to stuff like that, but it's different guys every week. So what do you do? Is the solution to bench Tyron Smith? No, of course not. The solution. I mean, if he continues to play poorly, you get to that point. But right now, you're not doing that. You're not. At this point, they're not going to make a move at kicker. And at the same time, you're just trying to find a fall guy because getting rid of Greg Zuerlein doesn't fix the Jets. The Jets are the Jets are the Jets are the Jets. That's what the situation is. I don't know why they continue to lose these games, but they do. And until they prove that they can win it, they're going to be a bad football team. And I have zero confidence that the current regime can turn it around because what have they given me? And I don't blame you, Alex, because this was supposed to be the time everything was different. The Jets were a have been a laughing stock of the NFL for the better part of the last decade and a half. Really, since those Rex Ryan teams, the Jets have been the laughing stock of the NFL. They acquired a Hall of Fame quarterback. They have a roster that on paper is still, and I hate using on paper thing, but it's true. On paper is a top 8 roster in the NFL.
And Rodgers has been pretty good mostly.
And Rodgers has been good. We talked about going into the season. The entire season hinged on Aaron Rodgers being good. If Aaron Rodgers,
he has been good, and it still is.
Exactly. We were saying if Aaron Rodgers is at least league average, which he has absolutely been at least league average. If we said if he's at least league average, the Jets are a playoff team and they are potentially even Super Bowl contenders. Well, Rodgers has been that. He's been maybe even better, and the Jets are still a bad football team with a good roster, a very good quarterback, and a coaching staff that. They're making
a young roster, too. It's all young guys.
A young roster, and then a coaching staff that they're trying to make changes, but it doesn't matter. And that's what makes it so hard to evaluate like a Joe Douglas, right? Because I look at it and I'm like, well, this should work. This should be a good football team, but they're not. And it doesn't matter what changes they make to the coaching staff because they're still not a good football team. And I don't know if there's external forces at play. I don't know what is causing this. But that's the reality we're living in. And it sucks because we can't blame somebody. It's different. This was different than like the Adam Gase years. Because we could just look at it and be like, oh, well, Adam Gase is clearly a bad football coach. The Jets should fire him. It's different than when the Jets had Zach Wilson. Because we're like, well, Zach Wilson is clearly a bad quarterback. Hopefully replacing him fixes things. Clearly, the Zach Wilson defenders were right about one thing. Replacing Zach Wilson with Aaron Rodgers didn't fix things. It sure fixed their quarterback play, but it did not fix the Jets. Maybe the Jets are just the Jets. And that's what makes it so discouraging.
So because the Lions are the Lions, they figured it out. Before this year, the Browns were the Browns. They had points.
The Commanders were the Commanders. The Commanders were the Commanders. They figured it out. The Texans were the Texans. They figured it out.
Look how bad before Mahomes historically, how bad the Chiefs were. They figured it out.
When will it be the Jets' turn?
And Vikings are figuring it out.
Vikings have figured it out. Sam Darnold's is an MVP candidate right now.
Ryan C., ESPN reporting Rodgers has fired the head coach. It might get to that point. This continues. We're going to go to Jonathan Gaucher with a spicy take. It means nothing. Roster is garbage.
Roster's not garbage.
No quarterback, O-line, one receiver, no tight end. D-line is one player. Okay, that's too hard. That's why we're mad, because the roster's good.
Look, man, I'm sorry. Jonathan, you're an idiot. Like, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be as blunt as that. If you watched today's game and you said the Jets don't have a quarterback, you're a fucking idiot. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be that blunt about it. Also, linebacker has one player. Going into today, the Jets had 2 of the top 4 highest graded linebackers in the NFL, and that was without C.J. Mosley, who, despite what some fans think, is not washed. He's still a good player. No tight end. Tyler Conklin's good. D-line, yeah, you got me there. They do have one good player.
Well, we agree with you there. But
wide receiver, Al Lazard, is playing well, and I can't believe I have to say that, but Al Lazard is playing well and is still a good player.
So, do you mean Allen leading the NFL in touchdowns, Lazard? Because he is.
He has his mistakes, and that's what makes him such a frustrating player. But the net result of Al Lazard, if you include today's game, is absolutely been a positive for the Jets today. Going into today, I would have said it's probably breaking even. Now it's a positive.
Adrian's 22. Tyron Smith is a sellout. Why do we give him vet days like he's good? We give him vet days because he gets hurt all the time. That's the only reason Tyron Smith gets vet days. Because if you breathe on him weird and he sneezes too hard, he's going to miss time. And we thought that would help him stay healthy because he's a Hall of Fame player. Tyron Smith's a Hall of Fame player. He's just been so physically beat up. Father Time's coming to collect here. It sucks that they always seem to collect on the Jets, but there we go.
It's the same thing the Cowboys did with him last year, and he made second-team All-Pro. They gave him vet rest days all year, and he made second-team All-Pro. Jets do it. Now he's washed. I don't know, man.
Alex, again, Rodgers had a 1,000-yard stare at the end there. I think there's a good chance he retires before the end of the season, especially with the hits he's taken. I don't think he does that. I think there's a good chance he retires at the end of the season, especially if they don't make the playoffs. I think they're just going to say, all right, Aaron's like, you know what? I got all I need, legacy-wise. I only got the one ring, but 500 touchdowns. I'm more than fine with that. Douglas didn't work. Coach is obviously already out. I feel like if they miss the playoffs, that probably happens, but it would take a lot for that to happen middle season. Eric Suarez with 2. Sit Kinlaw on the bench hurt more than help. They don't have anyone else.
Who are you going to play? You going to call back up Jalen Holmes? You going to bring him back? Who are you playing?
Play Eric Watts?
Kinlaw,
they don't have anybody.
Kinlaw is their second best defensive tackle. That's not a good thing because he's not particularly good. I honestly think he's been all right this season.
He was good before this game.
He had some, good's a stretch. I think he's been all right. Good comparatively to the rest of the roster, sure. His run defense is still bad. They don't have a pass rush. The Jets just don't have a pass rush. I don't give a shit about the pressure numbers when the pressures are getting there after 5 seconds because their coverage is so good. That's a very inflated number. Their pressures do not actually describe how good this or how efficient this Jets pass rush has been because it's not been good.
They've one pass rusher, McDonald, and he's getting sacks, but there's still limitations to McDonald, which again, he's not a finished product and he's having a good year, but he can't be your best playing defensive lineman.
And Michael Clemens is a complete zero and is another reason that they lost this game because he couldn't set the edge because he was undisciplined because he was probably looking at Deion Dawkins and trying to take his head off because that's what Michael Clemens does.
He literally is like if you just brought a bouncer and played football. He's a tough guy. I'm not saying he's not a tough guy. I'm saying he's not.
He can fucking kill. He could squash my head if he wanted to.
That's why I'm very, what do you call it?
I'm going to be honest.
I choose my words very carefully.
I'm sorry. He's not great. He's not very good at football. He's not a very good defensive. He's not a starting caliber defensive.
Has been established. Eric again though. Sit Mike Williams. Bring in Gibson and who we drafted, meaning Malachi Corley. They both stink. They both stink.
I'll be willing to say I don't know that Malachi Corley stinks. He probably stinks.
I'd say he stinks if he can't beat out Jason Brownlee.
You would think. I can't confidently say it. I haven't seen it with my own 2 eyes that he stinks, but I can tell you that, yes, Xavier Gibson is not particularly very good. It was weird. They had a little segment on him during the show, and they were like, or during the game, and they were like, Aaron Rodgers has been pushing for Xavier Gibson to get more playing time. And I'm like, he has? So says who? And then they show Gibson on the sideline. They show his snaps and his targets, and I'm like, why are we talking about Xavier Gibson? Like, he didn't play 2
He's
snaps.
not good. What is that, 3 catches this year?
He played 2 snaps all of last week. Why are we even mentioning the guy?
They're bored. Spencer W. 8-0 silver lining. They can't score touchdowns.
That was supposed to be Todd Downing's specialty, and they were 1 of 4 in the red zone today.
Yeah, and I mean, 1 got negated because dummy Tyron had to have that penalty. And then Brian Sternbeck, that 30-yard miss was inexcusable. Like, I get supporting you. Wasn't that the problem with Saleh that people didn't like? Was he was too buddy with the players? I see a thing before the game. Jeff Ulbrich wants us to be a player-led team, and then he does that. Like I guarantee you, if you take 100 people who said the Jets should fire Robert Saleh after that game, take 100 people who held that opinion. How many of them after this game you think?
Oh, Mike's gone now, dude. It's killing both of us. This is crazy. I think he was going to say something about Zerline. Is that correct, Mike? You're back?
Yeah, it's something about the weird thing is I didn't even leave Restream.
Yeah, no, it doesn't kick me out either. It's weird. I don't know.
I think it's because I have like 68 tabs open here. But
I also have like that many. That could be it, actually.
That could be it.
Anyway.
Our fault. But but like how, like if you were to take those 100 people, how many of them probably reverse their opinion? I'd say a good chunk of them. But that's what we said on the last podcast about Saleh.
Yeah.
Was people think this is going to be a change. How many times it happens more in basketball where they just like the coach is more just a name to yell at, and then when they fire him, it's almost more for PR reasons. But it seems like the Jets did fire Robert Saleh for PR reasons.
Yes. Well,
because this didn't change the offense because Todd Downing was going to be in anyway, so that probably would have looked the same under Saleh, and the defense got worse.
They fired him because Woody Johnson wanted a fall guy. Like that's Woody Johnson wanted a reason that the Jets were underachieving with their current roster. And if that's the case, you look toward the coaching staff. You look to the head coach. And I'm not going to sit here and say firing Robert Saleh wasn't justified. I get why they did it. I don't even necessarily think it was the wrong decision. But I also immediately, as soon as they did it, was like, well, this isn't going to solve their issues. I don't think it's going to fix anything. I don't necessarily think Robert Saleh is a very good head coach at this stage of his career. But I also don't think firing him was going to fix anything. And I don't think it did anything.
Spencer, this is still Robert Saleh's team. Culture doesn't just change in a week. Dude.
We're still blaming Saleh for this.
How is this Saleh's dude?
That's crazy.
Jake Day, blank check for Ben Johnson, new GM, and draft another quarterback. Oh, you think Aaron Rodgers is going to listen to Ben Johnson? Okay.
Well, I assume in this scenario, Rodgers retires. That's what I'm assuming.
I assume so too, and that would be a pretty good idea. But hey, remember the last time the Jets did a complete reboot with a new young quarterback? How'd that go?
And you know what's so?
Oh, it went horribly. Okay.
You know what's so wild? If you asked me right now, I think I would say Joe Douglas should be back next year. And that pisses me off that I think that, because look at his fucking record. Because the Jets haven't won shit under him. But at the same time, I can't sit here and say that I think he's built a good roster, a top 8 roster with some good young pieces, and think he's done a bad job. I think he's done a fine job. I think there's been plenty of misses. There's been plenty of hits. He's a mediocre run-of-the-mill GM. I don't think that warrants firing. I wouldn't hate it if they moved on. But I think
I've never seen an executive maybe Brian Cashman's the only other one.
It's so bizarre.
Where for 3 years now, like everything process-wise he's done has made a ton of sense.
And that's the point. Like,
and half the stuff works, half it doesn't.
Yeah.
But a lot of the mistakes he's made, I'm like, well, anybody would have made those. I get it. Anybody would have traded for Aaron Rodgers. Anybody would have signed Tyron Smith if available. Anybody would have signed Mike Williams when available.
Carl Lawson to that contract. I loved that contract. Turned out to be a disaster, but I thought that was
even Zach Wilson. He was regarded as he wasn't like, oh, the pro day. He was regarded as a top 3.
He was QB2
quarterback prospect, top 10 player throughout the draft. That wasn't necessarily I get that he messed up the pick, but you got to pick a quarterback number 2 overall, man.
It's what I said earlier. It makes the evaluation of Joe Douglas so hard when I know the Jets are have a good roster. They have a talented team, but they're just a bad football team. And who's at fault for that? I don't know. Maybe it's the football gods that just hate the Jets and curse them for eternity. I don't know, but I don't think it's Joe Douglas, which leads me to think.
What do you thought it was Saleh? Nope.
It's just a bizarre situation, man.
João Pedro Melo, mistakes here and there is a soft way of saying the team is undisciplined.
I mean, yeah, a lot of penalties, I guess.
Yeah, I get funny how it was the refs this time and not Saleh.
I mean, but the refs, this was a horrific.
Jesus Christ, the refs. And this isn't like, the Jets fans are complaining because they lost the game. This is not that.
I think the Bills got screwed more than the Jets, but I think both teams were screwed.
Justin called this a great game. I wouldn't call it a great game, specifically because there was no flow to it.
That's fair.
Play, penalty. Play, penalty. I guess that was the flow.
It should have been a great game that was ruined by the refs, and that's not the Jets didn't lose because of the refs. The Bills didn't win because of the refs. It was horrifically officiated on both sides.
Brian Hamill, defense is way overrated. Not elite at all. No impact plays ever. What more do you want from these guys? They're the only reason the Jets haven't been in the toilet the last couple of years. I get they started out terribly and we were ripping Ulbrich. I'll give them a break. 3 points in the second half with 1.5 defensive linemen and injuries at the other two positions, the other two units.
It depends.
What more do you want, man?
It depends on how you rate the Jets defense to determine if they're overrated. They're clearly worse than they were last year. I do not trust them with the game on the line as I did last year, and I think there's a very good reason for that. I don't think they're an elite defense because I don't trust them to close out games. And because I don't trust them to close out games because they don't have a pass rush and they can't stop the run. I'm just watching a lot of the Jets offensive linemen get beat today by the Bills pass rush, which, by the way, without Ed Oliver and without Von Miller is not good. Like, this is not a particularly good Bills defensive line with the pieces that they had out there. I mean, AJ Epinesa, I guess, is their best edge rusher probably right now, and then their best D tackle, Daquan Jones. Sure, the Jets D line is just as talented as that Bills defensive line, but the Bills D line was whooping the Jets offensive line, and it's just. I like the Epinesa pass rush win against Tyron Smith, like the clean sack from behind of Aaron Rodgers. I think it was on third down. I think the Jets have had one pass rush win that clean this year, and it might have been that Will McDonald sack against the Titans. That's it. They only sacks they get, the only pressures they get are either unblocked or coverage sacks. They just cannot get pressure on opposing.
And once a game, Will McDonald will beat a guy.
Maybe
That's
once
it.
a game. Yeah, maybe once a game he'll beat someone immediately, but he didn't do it today. He didn't beat anybody tonight immediately off the snap that I saw. Maybe that one where Allen ended up scrambling out to his right. But it's just I agree. Like, I agree that the Jets are not an elite defense because they struggle to close out games since their defensive line sucks because they cannot.
If we're putting the blame for 2 and 4 on the defense,
no, we're not putting the blame for 2 and we're not putting the blame for 2 and 4 on the defense. But I don't think they're an elite defense because of that.
Jake Day, Aaron Rodgers is not the problem. The Jets organization is the problem. But again, like,
yes, I agree.
What move? I get that some things haven't worked out. What were the objectionable things they did? It was getting Rodgers bad. Of course, he's Aaron Rodgers. You want to get Aaron Rodgers. You want to get Tyron Smith. You want to get Mike Williams. And they came here because they wanted to win a championship with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
It defies all.
The offensive line has also taken a step back in pass protection significantly the last few weeks. Morgan Moses is clearly playing through an injury. Tyron Smith looks washed. That sucks.
By the way, I saw someone asking what was their record the last couple of years. They were 4-2 in 2022 with Zach Wilson and 3-3. At this point last year, they were 3-3 and beat the Eagles with Zach Wilson going into a bye.
What's so frustrating is they have a better team and a better quarterback, and they're worse.
And they're worse.
And I don't think they're worse. I think they're playing well. They're just 2-4. At least they played well this game. I don't think they played well for a lot of that Minnesota game, but they played well in this game.
Yeah, it helps when you have a geriatric quarterback out there. Like, up until I get all right, if you want to put it, the throw at the end was bad. We can argue over.
I disagree. I don't even think it was bad. He threw.
I thought he underthrew it clearly. I know Williams slipped, but I thought it was an underthrow regardless.
I think he threw that ball where it had to be, where there was the hole in the defense. If he tries to go over the top, that might get picked. The corner or safety, whoever there was, the DB was back there.
Well, I think he maybe need to put a little more oomph on it if that was the case.
That ball gets
kind of floated, didn't it?
If Williams doesn't slip, he easily comes back to that ball. He just slipped. He fell down and concussed himself, apparently. I don't know.
Aaron Rodgers had 10 years with Devontae Adams and didn't win shit in Green Bay. You people are delusional. The problem which Rodgers defenders and I think us to a degree screamed about in Green Bay was coaching held him back, never had any weapons outside of Adams, didn't really have great defenses for most of his time.
Yeah.
This was the time where he was supposed to have all that. Didn't work. Didn't work again. Buy stocks. As soon as the Bills play a good team, they will get crushed. Who cares about the Bills at this point? We're still in the Jets. We're still. The
Bills have played. They played the Texans really tough. They didn't get crushed in that game. The Bills are a good team.
Brian Sternbeck, there is ultimately one person to blame, yourself, for choosing to root for this team. We're in too deep at this point.
I think like most of us, not everyone, but most of us were probably born into it And so we can blame our parents, we could blame our family members, whoever got us into it. It comes down from them. So if we want to absolve blame from ourselves, we'll pass it off to them.
Yannick Gordon, it's not hard to evaluate Joe Douglas for me. The offensive line still sucks. The receivers besides Garrett are bad. Lazard's been good.
True.
He gutted the defensive line in the offseason. I want him gone.
But yeah, the defensive line, absolutely. The offensive line as totality for his entire tenure, yeah, you could blame Joe Douglas for the offensive line. I think the moves that they made this offseason were very good with the budget.
The interior is great.
Yeah, but overall, yeah, if you want to just say, okay, when Joe Douglas took over to what it is now, it's better. It's not as good as it probably should be. And there's a lot of misses in there. The Mekhi Becton miss being one of the most prominent. They haven't really hit on any mid-round offensive linemen. That's something that a lot of good GMs do. And a lot of teams that have good offensive lines have at least one mid-round starter that they hit on. Jets do not have that.
But the Jets have never hit on a mid-round
wide receivers now. The Jets right now, the Jets have a very good skill position group. I don't think that's a hot take at all.
Which is why it's so puzzling as to why this is
a good quarterback and a very good skill position group. There is zero reason their offense should be bad, and tonight it really wasn't. They just keep like shooting themselves in the foot. Like they should have scored more than 20 points tonight easily. They should have scored 30 plus. The offense
26 minimum, probably 30.
Yeah, the offense played very well tonight, but they keep shooting themselves in the foot. They keep finding a way to lose, and that's what sucks. I can't blame the offense. I mean, the offense played well, and the defense did, for the most part, played well in the second half. They just find ways to lose, man. They find ways to lose.
Cam Bouchard, how does this game affect the alleged talks with Reddick? I don't think that's its whole separate issue. By the way, our theory was confirmed. Reddick was doing this all himself, and it wasn't his agent.
Correct.
His agents, by law, have to act in their client's best financial interest, and he lost $10 million. I don't think this changes that. No. I think it's all on Reddick at this point, especially after there was another rumor that him and his agents and the Jets basically worked out a deal and he turned it down. It's just all on him at this point. It's just if he wants to play.
Yeah, I don't think Reddick cares if the Jets are contenders or not. That's not really his concern. He just
the Eagles were a contender where he's from, and he left.
So the Jets could be 0-6 right now, and I think there's every chance Haason Reddick would still, be the same, have the same level of interest in playing for the Jets if they were 6-0. So I don't think it changed anything. Again, Reddick coming back helps. It definitely gives you that. Honestly, Reddick might be as big of an addition to that defense as Devontae Adams would be to the offense because
I think he'd be bigger.
He might be bigger. You can make that argument because he gives you a closer. He gives you a guy. If Haason Reddick is the Haason Reddick that he has been throughout most of his career, then this Jets defense, this Jets defensive line has a guy that can get to the quarterback when the game is on the line. He can create negative plays instead of forcing the coverage to last 6-7 seconds. That's huge. The Jets do not have that. I don't care. Will McDonald is not that guy. He's not that guy right now. And especially with no one else around him. He might be more of that guy with Haason Reddick next to him, with Quinnen Williams hopefully playing better with Haason Reddick next to him. So I do think Reddick getting back in the mix. I know a lot of Jets fans are very not pleased with how the situation has been handled on Reddick's perspective, on Reddick's side, and very, very fair, very, very valid. I'm not pleased either, but Haason Reddick makes the Jets a lot better of a football team, and I hope he's back in the mix. I hope they fix this situation and they get it resolved.
Yannick Gordon, why do you guys like Joe Douglas? I don't get it. It's not that we like him. It's just
I think he's fine. I think he's a middle of the pack GM.
It's the thing because the GMs that we've hated in the past, John Idzik and Mike McCagnon made these moves where immediately you knew they'd be bad, and then they turned out to be bad. So it's like, why you think that most of Joe Douglas's failures, we went into that thinking, man, that's going to be a great move, and then they just don't work.
Yep.
And you can't. How do you explain Tyron Smith all of a sudden not being? He was an All-Pro last year. Yeah. Not like Rodgers, where you're banking on maybe he's this from a couple of years. Last year he was an All-Pro. Now he's like, how do you plan for that? Mike Williams gets one catch a game. How do you plan for that?
Just the totality of the roster. This is a good roster. I challenge anybody. Well, we already had Jonathan or whoever on Facebook that was the challenge this, but I challenge anyone to break down why this roster isn't good because it's a good roster. This is a good team, or at least they should be on paper. They're not a good football team, but they're talented. They're talented. This is a talented roster with a good quarterback, 2 good running backs, a good skill position group, an offensive line that is bad. It's not great. It's below average, I would say, but I'd
say average. I just think Tippmann's been good. I think Vera Tucker's been good. I think Simpson's been good.
The tackles are struggling. I think Simpson's been Tippmann and Vera Tucker have been their best too, but the totality of how they played, I think, has been below average. I think the individual offensive line pieces are better than the whole, than the sum of its parts, which Keith Carter.
I think that's the story of the Jets this year. The individual pieces are better than the sum of the parts.
That is absolutely a story of this Jets team. And is that Joe Douglas's fault? Because Joe Douglas's job isn't necessarily to build the team, the chemistry, right? It's his job to build the individual parts and make sure that this roster is good. And the roster is good. Like, this, again, is a good roster. So
I guess coaching is supposed to, but
coaching is in theory supposed to. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess not. Spencer Green, how is this team better than the Zach Wilson-led team last year? Someone explained. I'm baffled. It got no better.
The roster's so much
better. The roster's better.
The roster is so much better.
The offense is better. The defense is slightly worse. They should be better, and they're just not.
Jason Brownlee was the team's wide receiver 2 for half of last year. What the fuck are you talking about? what are we doing here? They used 14 different offensive linemen. They had the worst ranked offensive line in the NFL. It's not good, but it's better than it was last year. They also have Braylon Allen, who they didn't have last year. The offense is absolutely, and they have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Like, what are we doing?
Brian Sternbeck says, you can't say Smith and Moses are on watch and then say Douglas has built a good roster.
I don't think he's built a good offensive line currently. The overall roster, I think, is good. I think those are two separate conversations. The offensive line is part of the roster, obviously, but I think it's a different conversation altogether. It's a different conversation to say that the offensive line is still a work in progress, because it absolutely is. And like I said, when we're talking about Joe Douglas's entire tenure with the Jets, yeah, his job building the offensive line has been a failure, because he's had 5, 6 years to build that offensive line. And while it's better than the likes of James Carpenter and Jonathan Harrison starting when he took over, it's not good. And a lot of that is because of the misses in the draft, because of the Mekhi Becton miss, because they failed to develop any mid-round picks. And again, is that a failure on coaching? Is it the Jets offensive coaching staff's fault that Max Mitchell is a bad backup tackle, or is it the GM for missing the pick? It's probably a combination of the two. But overall, I do think this is a good roster.
As Justin heads out for more tech problems, Brandon R. My dad is at least you finished your point right on time there.
Yeah,
my dad is a Giants fan. It's totally on me.
Oh, man.
Yannick Gordon too. I wasn't born into this. I chose this hell for myself. All right, so we
boys.
at least have the excuse of our dads indoctrinated us into this.
It's in my blood.
Now it's just a sunk cost thing. Like, we can't, if we didn't quit before,
And that's why we can't get on the Jets for not cutting Greg Zuerlein, because if we're going to fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy, then so are they.
Gregory Freeman, where the heck is Jabari Zuniga when you need a pass?
He's hanging out with Lorenzo Malden. That's where he is.
He's hanging out with Ja'Kai Polite.
Oh, my goodness.
Maybe don't draft anybody from Florida. I think that might have been one of his big problems, was he loved the Gators.
Dude, Zuniga was a 3rd-round pick. That's crazy.
So was Polite. He was higher than Polite.
I know.
Remember when he got kicked out of combine interviews because he was like, they were just disrespecting my game? It's like, what did you think they were?
I thought,
what kind of lotion do you want us to use to massage you? What do you think these interviews ask? Like,
I still thought he was going to be good, man. I was really excited.
I mean, he was getting 1st-round buzz, and then they're just like, oh, he just is a monster. Like, nobody can control this guy. Yeah. That's why he fell.
Shout out Lorenzo Malden, though. He's killing it in the CFL.
Yes, he is, with the Stampeders, I think.
Maybe
one of the two teams. There's 8 teams in the CFL, or 10. 2 of them are named the Rough Riders. One of them's Rough Riders with 1 word, and one's Rough Riders with 2 words.
That was the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. What's the other one?
The Ottawa Rough Riders.
Is that new?
No, they've been a team for a while, but there's 2 of them, and they're both named the Rough Riders because it's Canada.
They were a team. They're no longer a team.
Really? Oh, well, there you go. Because they realized people got confused, probably.
Spreading lies, Michael. Spreading lies.
Because people got confused when the Rough Riders were playing the Rough Riders.
Yes, and now they're the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Oh, that's a worse name. Jeez.
I'm not sure what that's. I don't even know.
The New York Green Whites. Brandon R. Jets don't innovate, so they aren't ever going to be elite offensively. That's a fair point. Like, the Downing thing was better than Hackett, but I'm just going to rephrase my earlier point. Like, if it was like going to a restaurant and Todd Downing just gives you like a cheeseburger and fries, and you go, okay. And then Nathaniel Hackett shat into his own hand and rubbed it on the plate.
Oh my God.
Like the difference between those two things in terms of quality, you're like, man, Todd Downing must be amazing. Turns out it's just this is what normal, average, milquetoast NFL offenses look like. We're finally free of Hackett. That's fine. But I'm with you in that not only do they not have an elite offense, but they had a chance to get guys who could make an elite offensive staff, but Aaron Rodgers didn't want to. So they couldn't last year.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Are you still stunned by my?
No, I just the shat in his hand. That was funny. You got me there. I was just going on a rabbit hole, being like, man, the Lions got their, they got their due. The Commanders got their due. The Texans got their due. And then it makes me think.
Really, the only teams who haven't figured out are the Browns mostly, and then the Jets.
A lot of the difference between those teams is they figured out how to have this kind of got me thinking about it too. Like
the Browns are a worse situation than this. Even with all this, don't get me wrong.
Let's ignore the Browns here because they're just a disaster right now with Deshaun Watson. But like looking at teams like the Texans, like the Lions, like the Commanders, they've been able to turn it around because they have elite offenses at this stage, or they have high-level offenses because they have high-level offensive coordinators or play callers, whether it's Ben Johnson.
And two of them hit on a young quarterback.
Right. Whether it's Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick or even Cliff Kingsbury doing a really good job with Washington right now. Jets could have had him in the offseason. I don't know if you saw that report that came out.
Could have hired him as a head coach.
The Jets
interviewed him.
But even still, they could have had him as an offensive coordinator in the offseason, but Rodgers did not let them demote Hackett. I don't know if you saw that report that came out from, I believe it was The Athletic, that Robert Saleh wanted to add an offensive coach in the offseason. They approached Arthur Smith. They approached not Ben Johnson. They approached Cliff Kingsbury. They approached Luke Getsy. And there was a fourth name. Oh, Eric Bieniemy is the fourth guy.
Even Getsy, you would have thought, because him and Rodgers, you would have thought he would have been okay. Let's bring Getsy on.
They approached all four of them. Aaron Rodgers was involved in this decision and agreed that a change needed to be made. But according to a report, Rodgers refused to let them boot Hackett. So as a result, they could not hire any of them as offensive coordinators. None of those guys were interested in joining the staff as anything but offensive coordinator because they did get all four of them got offensive coordinator positions with other teams. And as a result, the Jets did not make any significant changes to their offensive staff. They only replaced their running backs coach and wide receivers coach. And then Saleh got fired after 5 games. And then only then did they make the change with the offensive staff. Whatever, man.
So I guess if you want to, is the biggest problem with the Jets in this time, I guess Aaron Rodgers, the personnel man.
Yeah, and I've been saying that for a while now. That
but then you also get Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback who's been pretty good.
I've been saying this for a while. I compared it to the Bill Belichick situation in New England, where Bill Belichick, the GM, was continuously spiting Bill Belichick, the head coach, for years during the last 8 years of his run with the Patriots, because he was making some. Those Patriots drafts were disgusting, like awful.
Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi back to back.
Oh, just terrible drafts. And so what was the guy's name? Antonio Garcia. Remember him? He was a Jet.
I think he got sick though. I think was his problem.
He did. He was briefly a Jet.
Derek Rivers,
the edge rusher. Yeah, dude. But yeah, I compared it to that, where Aaron Rodgers, the player, is still playing at a very high level. Like Aaron Rodgers, the player, is a top 15 quarterback. After today, I might say he's probably been a top 12 quarterback in the NFL this year, especially because quarterback play is kind of down across the board. I know that's another thing that, Jets fans are maybe a lot of fans that don't watch a lot of football around the league and only just watch the Jets. They look at Rodgers play and it's been a lot better than in the past, but it's not elite, which is true. But if you look at look at Dak Prescott, look at Patrick Mahomes, look at guys who are I would say widely seen as good quarterbacks. I know people, Dak Prescott's in the tier of quarterback that everyone just shits on because they're not elite. So as
they're on the Cowboys.
Right. So as a result, they must be bad. In reality, Dak Prescott is a very good quarterback. But if you look at the caliber of quarterback play around the league, it's not been very good this year. Aaron Rodgers has been a top 12 quarterback, especially if you factor in this performance. So yeah, that's just what it is.
And because I really hate myself and I'm also a Nets fan, so that's now twice they take these big swings for guys and they A, get hurt immediately, B, don't play, and C, will likely leave early. So try doing that for years. I challenge you. I have the Yankees, man. Even the Yankees.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm sure others have made this comparison. Is Aaron Rodgers the Kevin Durant of the NFL?
I was just about to say that.
Is he the Kevin Durant of the NFL? Supremely talented, one of the most talented players ever at his position.
You got to bring in his buddies. You got to do things his way.
Got to bring in his buddies. Questions about winning. Definitely has a bit of a whiny personality. And
they have rings. They have one, but not, and they've left meat on the bone.
Yeah, exactly. They've been criticized for not winning more than, more. They should have won more given their talent. They're both prickly personalities. I'm sure others have made that comparison, but it's definitely an apt one.
It's because see, here's the thing though, is I've never seen, even you go to like LeBron, Steph Curry, for some reason, KD has this like Svengali ability where everybody who gets him does whatever he wants immediately. And
That's
just
Rodgers. That's Rodgers.
Rodgers has that too.
Dude, I bet Steph Curry wishes he had more say in what the Golden State Warriors were doing, man.
And you know what? Honestly, when Kevin Durant played for the Nets, he averaged like 28 points a game.
Oh, yeah.
And then Kyrie didn't get vaccinated, and Harden got fat and quit and got hurt, and like stuff outside of
I hate James.
What he could control on the field ruined everything.
Yeah.
And then now here it is again. Because again, Rodgers on the field. I know he had the interception, but generally, hold on. Frank Perez.
No.
What did we do? How is this our fault? What? That's 2 streams in a row where we've been blamed for the Jets. Buddy, Frank, we want them to be good. How is it our fault? Should we want them to suck and then we'll just reverse jinx everything?
This and the cruel irony. I'm just sorry. I just saw this one. The cruel irony. The cruel irony of being a Jets fan is that shit like this does happen to this team like all the time. They have
Seibert's 15 of 16 this year, by the way.
Seibert's, he's my fantasy kicker. He's killing it. The Jets had a kicker in Greg Zuerlein who literally had the best season of any kicker in Jets franchise history last year. Obviously, under no circumstances would they have ever considered cutting him for Haason Reddick. But sure, in hindsight now, the irony of it is that Haason Reddick is a guy that got off the street, literally off the street, is now one of the better kickers in the NFL, while the historic kicker they had last year, I believe, has the worst field goal percentage in the NFL. So, wonderful.
Another one here, Alter. He has a passer rating of 85, Rodgers. You can't leapfrog 10 other guys. Passer rating would say right now that as much as would say that Caleb Williams and Patrick Mahomes are essentially the same quarterback this year.
What are we trying to do here?
He's saying Aaron Rodgers is not a top 10 quarterback because his passer rating is low.
Okay, well that's obvious. Passer rating is an objectively flawed stat.
Yeah. You know who also has a higher passer rating than Patrick Mahomes this year? Justin Fields.
Yeah.
By like a couple points. So is Justin Fields better than him too?
No, clearly not. Rodgers
is Joe Flacco the 8th best quarterback in the league?
I'm glad
if you buy it for that, you got to buy it for everybody.
I'm happy you have these numbers pulled up right now.
Well, when I saw that, like, all right, passer rating is just such a 2004 way of looking at things.
Yeah,
and I get that every stat's yeah, I get that you could play with data any way you want, but like if you use passer rating for that, you got to use it for everything, right? If it's the be all end all. Spencer Green 2, New York Jets 4-2, Greg Z 2-4. If Greg Zuerlein made his kicks this year, they are 4-2,
which is what Zuerlein was doing all of last year.
But are we going to blame a kicker for 2 losses? A single kicker?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. If he makes his kicks, they're 4-2.
Frank Perez, I'm a Raiders fan. You're not getting Devontae. Forget it.
Hold on. This man's a Raiders fan? This dude's get out of this chat. Who invited a Raiders fan into this chat? This
is the Bills Jets chat.
You want to talk about the worst fan base in the NFL? Don't get me started on Raiders fans.
No, Raiders aren't even close. I like Raiders fans.
No. I had the unfortunate privilege of covering the Raiders for a few years when I was doing Bay Area sports. By far the worst fan base that I've ever covered. And I'm going to be completely honest when I say that. I've covered a good amount of teams, had pleasant interaction with both of them. 49ers fans, awesome. Cool guys, cool people. Ravens fans, pretty cool. I like Ravens fans.
Yeah, Ravens fans are cool.
Jets fans are Jets fans. I feel like I'm also a little biased discussing Jets fans. Raiders fans are the shits. They suck. You're awful. Get out of here. Get out of this chat.
Well, you know what, though? The messed up part is I don't think they trade for Devontae Adams, so he might be right.
They might not. I mean, I don't know. I just don't want a Raiders fan in this chat.
So, like, what if they trade for Devontae Adams, then Aaron Rodgers retires, and is he going to demand a trade again?
He'll just be the poor guy will just be unfortunately in the exact same situation he was when Carr.
Yeah, the Jets and the Raiders have the exact same record. Yeah. The Jets have a much better quarterback. Other than that, The head coach, we don't know if he's good. There's instability.
The Jets are significantly better on paper than the Raiders. It doesn't play out that way, but they are. I mean, again, the narrative is so different if Greg Zuerlein makes his kick. The narrative is so different if Tyron Smith doesn't hold. But it's those things every single week. Every week it happens. There's one or two things where it's just like, well, if that didn't happen, they would have won this game. But every week they do happen.
Okay, Artur is now saying that Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. I think that
Derek Carr.
I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. Spencer Green, I don't think this season is over. I truly believe we can win the next 4.
They
They could have won this one.
They could have won this one. They could have beat Minnesota. They could have beaten. They probably couldn't have beat the Niners, but they could have won. Mike's gone again. They could win the next 4, but they probably won't. Mike, are you back yet? What's going on? I don't know what's going on with him. But yeah,
I was trying to get back on, and then you kept.
Oh, is that what was going on?
At the same time that I was trying to rejoin it with, so you were locking me out.
My bad.
But I want to get to that comment really quick, Spencer Green.
Sure.
The Jets have 5 games left before the bye, and I want to ask you, Justin Freed,
sure,
my co-host of the Jet Press podcast.
What do you got, buddy?
At Pittsburgh, at New England, home Thursday for the Texans, at the Cardinals, home for the Colts. How many wins?
Dude, I don't know, because the Jets could win every one of those games. They could. I've seen it.
Dude.
I don't know, man. I don't know. All right.
Pick a number 1 through 5.
All right, let's see. Let me. I'm looking at the schedule right now. Let's realistically look at this. I mean, do I think they're going to go on the road in Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers and a much better coach team? No. So I'm going to say that's their
2-5. I'm
going to say that's their 4th consecutive loss. I do think that they beat New England. I think the talent gap there is enough, as we already saw in one game this year. I do think they end up beating New England. Probably steal one, or I shouldn't even be saying steal. They'll probably win one against Arizona or Indy. I'd say they lose to Houston. I say they probably win. I'll say they win 3. Honestly, I think they win 3 of the next 5 games.
That makes them a 2-5, 3-5.
That would make them 5-6 going into the bye.
Aaron Rodgers supposed to be different,
which the season would still be alive. And the vibes would be a little bit better because if what I'm saying is true, they would lose 4 in a row and then win 3 of their next 4. So the vibes would be better going into the bye, but they'd still be 5-6.
Brandon R. I'm expecting some locker room fractures after this shit.
I'm not. I don't.
They stuck through with Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I because I don't think the locker room is like who are you pointing the blame at? I don't think anyone's going in that locker room and going, "Damn, Jeff Ulbrich, you lost this game." No one's looking at the offensive coaching staff because the offense kind of balled out.
Rodgers, and even that, I had 3. I know he didn't get the 300-yard, but 296. That's 300 basically.
The only guy that's in trouble, in danger of getting jumped is Greg Zuerlein. Like they're not blaming the coaching staff. I don't think after this one.
All right, then yell at the kicker, I guess. Sure. I got to end it to Artur. Do you actually think this same team with Derek Carr doesn't go over 300 yards? Yes.
Shut up. Is this guy?
I'm a Derek Carr supporter. I've defended him more than most throughout his career.
I like Derek Carr.
Yeah, I like Derek Carr too. That doesn't make any sense.
Is that? I bet this dude's a Raiders fan. I bet that's not even a Saints fan. I bet that's a Raiders fan. Get out of this chat, Raiders fans. What are we doing here?
Well, everybody's going to get out soon just because we're going to bring this stream to a close. Thank you for tuning in. We have a lot of people. I know it's late. I know it's a Tuesday officially on the East Coast, so a lot of guys are getting up early for work tomorrow. So thank you, guys. That's actually a great comment, Brian. He might bring his barbed wire bat. Just keep him around as like an enforcer.
He'll do that, and then he'll slip, and Zuerlein will get around him and get a first down. Sorry, I'm just.
All right, but Justin, also they have weight classes for a reason. Greg Zuerlein versus Michael Clemens.
Well, that wouldn't be fair. See, I've said this. I was talking to my friends.
Just squash his head in between his bicep like a grape and just pop off.
I was talking to my friends who were Bills fans before this game, and I'm like, look, if Michael Clemens and Deion Dawkins were put into a ring, Michael Clemens would eat him for lunch. He would.
Oh, easily. That's the messed up part.
He would kill Deion Dawkins. Unfortunately, Deion Dawkins is a very good left tackle, and Michael Clemens is not a very good defensive end. So on the football field, it's not a fair matchup, but it's also not a fair matchup off the football field.
I know Deion Dawkins can gloat, but if Michael Clemens is like, "Hey, man, I'll wait outside the locker room and scrap," I'm like, "Hey, I'd pay for that." Tell me you wouldn't pay for that.
We wonder why Michael Clemens wanted to meet Deion Dawkins in the tunnel because he knew he couldn't
win.
He knew he couldn't win on the field, so he had to win off the field.
Anybody with that big of a septum, I mean, he looks like a bull, like with a septum piercing like that.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that photo of him at A&M where he's like squashing a football in his hand?
God, no.
Yeah, he reminds me of, here's a wrestling reference since it's late at night now. I remember Danny Hodge, the wrestler.
Danny Hodge. You are talking to a diehard wrestling fan.
He's like it was like an old like 40s, 50s, 60s wrestler.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the guy in the 40s. Yeah.
And he was like you know everything about wrestling. I would have thought he came up.
Oh, this
he
is
was like this
amateur,
super strong guy. He would crush apples like in his hand because he was so strong. And he would put on these exhibitions where he would get pliers and just break them by like squeezing them with the force of his hands. Just pop break them, just pop break them.
Wow.
Like, gee, that's what whenever I think of Michael Clowns, that's what I think of.
What a reference.
Hey, that's a pretty good pull. You got to give me that.
Oh, it's a great pull. I'm looking him up right now. It's yeah, good for him.
So yeah, now while Justin does his reading for the rest of the night, thank you for tuning in. You know, I know it's a late night. I know a lot of you got work tomorrow. Thanks for taking some time to spend it with us. Jets are 2-4, which sucks.
Yeah, man.
You know what we signed up for.
Yeah.
With this. I've been told that we'll be rewarded on the back end because you know what? The Browns did a horrible thing and they're getting karmic retribution for Deshaun Watson. So I've been told that karma exists and the Lions turned it around. So their karma finally is cooking for them.
How much longer do we have to wait, Mike? How much longer?
I guess there's only one way to find out, Justin.
And that's to tune into the Jet Press podcast every single week. I will say, I like the, I didn't get to point this out in the beginning. I like the little display change we got here. This is cool. Like it says the fan-sided logo down there, the Apple Podcast.
Because we got to put on a professional show for the people.
This looks kind of cool. I didn't get a good look at that until just now. But yeah, man, the Jets are a bad football team. We appreciate every single person, even the Raiders fans. I appreciate the Raiders fans a little bit less.
I do.
I appreciate every single person. We all appreciate every single person that tuned in tonight, that watched, that commented. We greatly appreciate it. Is despite this team just being so bad and pissing us off every single week, it is great that we get to talk with you guys about this team because I don't know how else we'd survive. Honestly, I need someone to vent with, and it's nice we get to do that after every single game and during the week. Mike, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
I just think that we should enjoy these couple days because next year they're going to have a new coach and probably they're going to have Derek Carr as a bridge quarterback.
Oh.
So,
do you think the Saints are getting rid of Derek Carr that quick?
What?
You think the Saints are getting rid of Derek Carr that quick?
I think they're going to be bad enough where they're going to be in like draft a quarterback range. And I think Allen's probably getting fired, so new coach gets their guy kind of thing.
Spencer Rattler on his Sam.
They're going to sign like Jimmy G or something like that and then draft Shedeur Sanders and then that'll go sideways. So before that happens, I don't know. Maybe we'll get in a couple more entertaining moments in the last charge of the Light Brigade here.
You know,
things go back to even more same old Jets, where at least now they're bad and interesting. Before they were bad and uninteresting, and I can't decide which one's worse.
You know what's more likely though is that in 2 days, or I guess now it's technically Tuesday, in 1 day when we're doing the Jet Press podcast live Wednesday 3 p.m. Eastern time, we're gonna be talking about how the Jets just traded for Devontae Adams. And how the vibes are back.
And then Rodgers is going to retire and he's going to demand a trade again. Or Devontae Adams is going to get traded and doesn't show up because we can trade for guys. Again, another Douglas thing. Good move. You get Haason Reddick for a pretty good deal, and he doesn't show up at the cost of $10 million. It just never happened ever.
Mike, if the Jets trade for Devontae Adams, I'm tweeting out that Joe Douglas Stone Cold meme. I'm tweeting. That's why I want the Jets to retain Joe Douglas because I want to get you more use out of that meme. I was just getting use out of that Robert Saleh, oh, when we lose, we suck. Everyone sucks. I can't use that meme anymore, and that sucks.
I think I'm going to black out in the Steelers game. Okay. I feel like I'm becoming like the Joker. Like it's taking over.
All right. Well, before we go any more off the rails, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at by Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Follow the Jet Press at the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. You guys know what to do. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We will be live this Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time and live immediately following every single Jets game. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Freed. That has been Mike Luciano. We'll see you guys next time.
Please just win games, man. I'm getting close to the end of the rope here, man.